Okay, let's get it rolling. Good morning, and welcome to our second webinar session in a series of fall sessions that we're having here at Capital Good Fund. Hopefully, you all have gotten the memo. I can't see anyone out there, but they're themed sessions. Last month was kind of back to school with underwriting, understanding how we underwrite here in credit at Capital Good Fund. And that was led by Kyle Flavin, who's upper left-hand corner. I'm not sure how it's facing your screen. So to this month, we're doing a little trick or treat as it relates to loan originations. And Roxana Mercado Rojo, I got to work on my pronunciations, our Director of Loan Originations, will be dealing with this session today. So welcome everyone to today's session. I certainly appreciate your time. We're going to try to get right into the presentation. Few housekeeping things today. Question and answers, we're going to save that to the end. If you do have a question, though, we do have a chat box going, so you can ask your question in the chat, and we'll review that as well. But for most of the questions, we'll open it up at the end for Q&A. So without further ado, welcome. And this session is titled No Tricks, Just Treats When Lending with Capital Good Fund, which will specifically talk about our application process. So after you've identified a client that you think you would want to refer to us and they start the application process, we're going to kind of walk you through that now. For our customers that are partners that have already been through it, you kind of understand this process, but we're going to dig a little deeper. And for new partners that are coming on, that are on this session today, hopefully you'll have a few takeaways, a few nuggets that will help you as we move forward with helping as many of your clients that we possibly can. Roxana, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Lawrence. I just want to confirm you can see my screen presentation. Okay, awesome. All right. Welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining. We are super excited to have launched these webinars. I know some of you have been with Capital Good Fund for a while and others have recently joined. So it's cool that we get to do this like 2-in-1 where it's like a refresher, but also kind of like an onboarding call for some people. So we're hoping we can kind of either, give you some knowledge on the process or get you back up to speed if it's been a while. So I will be going over like highlights of the application process in terms of like what the client goes through, what the attorney goes through in terms of like communication and just steps to follow. I'm happy to say that over the course of the last few years, we've really tried to fine tune, the tools that we have, the information, and really getting resources out to attorneys. I think one thing that you'll notice across this presentation is that the prep is super important. So you'll hear me say that a lot. We usually provide attorneys or caseworkers, organizations with an immigration checklist that they can use. And that checklist is like your go-to. It's like your source of truth. You have all the eligibility requirements in one place, intake requirements for documents. And then you also see a little bit down the line, right? Like if your applicant gets approved, what are we going to ask for? What are things that you should know? So printing out this checklist and going over it during your consultation is key. That's definitely going to set your client up to have an efficient process with us once they go online. So after this webinar, we'll make it a point to share this slideshow with you along with the checklist as well, so that you can have it readily available. Now, the first step, as you can see here, is our eligibility check. So I'm just going to show you a quick snapshot of some of the questions we will ask for eligibility. So as you can see, we have some questions at the top. So if they answer yes to one or more of those, then they will not be eligible. And for the questions at the bottom, if they answer no to one or more of those, then they will not be eligible. So this is part of the checklist. So like I said, if you print it out, we have this in English and Spanish and your client answers the questions, you'll be able to know if they're a good fit for Capital Good Fund. But even if they're not a good fit right now, they might be in the future, right? Like maybe they don't have a bank account right now, but they're going to open one so they can always revisit this. So it's very helpful for them to at least have this information, even if it's going to take a little bit longer for them to become a candidate, right? So these are the same questions that the client will answer once they go to the online application. Now, if they're not eligible, they will be taken to a screen that basically tells them like, hey, at this time you're not eligible. But if they are eligible, they will be taken to the actual application. Now, the application, like I said, is online. You can do it on your phone, on your tablet, on your computer. And basically it's just the contact information, some questions about their budget, like how much income do they make, their expenses. Very straightforward. It just should take a few minutes. But the key items here are, one, we're going to ask your client, who are you working with? Who's your attorney? So at this point in the process, it's very, very important that they have the right information, and in particular, the email address. So when the client reaches this portion of the application, they'll have to submit the firm name, their caseworker or attorney name, the phone, and the email address. And what this will do is it will trigger an email to your office as soon as they hit submit. And that's going to be your confirmation that your client applied, but you will also be asked to complete an immigration verification form. And I'll get to that in a minute, but I just want to really emphasize on that trigger because, that keeps you in the loop. And as soon as you can fill out that immigration verification form, the more information we'll have to evaluate the file. In addition, the loan amount is very important as well. You want to make sure that like during your consultation, you're talking numbers with your client, right? So let's say they're requesting $5,000 on their application, and then you later confirm through the immigration verification form that they need $10,000. Now there's a discrepancy of $5,000. So when there's a discrepancy of that sort, we usually reach out to the client and attorney just to get on the same page, and so that we can evaluate for the right amount, because that will make a difference. So just making sure those numbers align will eliminate the discrepancy, and there would be no delays on that end. And then essentially after they get through the questions of the application, they'll reach a page where they have to submit their intake documents. So again, this is where the checklist comes into play, right? Like you prepped your clients, they know what intake documents they have to submit. And this is where like our first treat comes in, right? So we have our Plaid tool. Our Plaid tool is basically a way that a client can connect their bank account with us. It literally takes like 2 minutes. All they have to do is log in to their bank account and allow for us to receive information. This will give us their last 90 days of banking history so that we can go ahead and evaluate the loan. It's a lot simpler than dealing with documents and is it in the right format? Are there duplicates? It's just a lot less complicated. And they will always have this option as long as they're enrolled in online banking. They can take advantage of that. And then aside from that, if your client does report that they are self-employed on their application, once we receive it, we will reach out to them for that information. But for the most part, like bank statements, the immigration verification form, and their application. Now, as I mentioned earlier, we do have intake document requirements, but in the checklist, we also get ahead, right? So we're telling you if we request an ID, this is what you can submit. If we request proof of income, this is what your client can submit. If for any reason you look at this list and you're like, hey, my client doesn't have this, you have an alternative, you can always reach out to us and we can work through, the details of the scenario. But also look at this list as a way to get ahead, right? So if your client just applied and they have all the documents, they have a state ID and they have a profit and loss statement that they want to send in, you can send that to us early. So feel free to, ask us to add more upload slots to their application, or you can email us the information directly, and we will move it to their file, and that will help inform the decision. Not only that, but if your client becomes approved later, and then we get to the point where we're requesting the ID and the closing documents, they would have already passed that milestone. So they will most likely reach contract signing super fast. Now, one thing I will mention is that, we have different forms of communication. We'll call you and the client, we'll email, we'll text. whatever's more efficient. But you do have to check your junk and spam folder. We have had, instances where, with attorneys or with clients, like that's where the email is, getting sorted for some reason. So I would just recommend checking that. If that doesn't, work out, then you can always call us in case there's like a typo in the email or something. But I just want to throw that out there. Now, we do have a quick example here. So if, your client applies with us, they submit their documents, but the IVF, which is the immigration verification form, is still missing, you'll probably receive this email. Now, this email will give you a link, and all you have to do is click into it, answer the questions about the case details, right? And as you can see here, if your client is undergoing an asylum case, we will require a co-applicant. Now, we do make exceptions here on a case-by-case basis. We always like to work with our clients and the attorneys to find a way to move forward. But it's important for us to inform the decision by getting this as soon as possible. Technically, we cannot close the loan without this form being completed. So the sooner we have it, the better we can inform the process and move forward. Now, part of this immigration verification form is telling us who the beneficiary of the case is. Now, this is super important because if your client's at risk of deportation or something like that, and they're the direct beneficiary, right, and the applicant as well, then they're directly at risk. So we're going to ask for a co-applicant, supporting information. However, there could be a scenario where like a relative is applying or a friend is applying and they're not the direct beneficiary. And that's super helpful because, they're not at risk directly. So that might eliminate a requirement that would otherwise be there. So it's very important for you to let us know who the beneficiary is. And then, like I said earlier, we will ask you for the breakdown of the fees. So this is like a quick example. As long as this total, aligns with what your client is requesting, there will be no discrepancies. And then we would be able to move forward. All right. Now I want to talk a little bit about milestones. So as the application progresses, you will be receiving emails from us. Now, as I mentioned, that first milestone is like your client applied, they submitted the application, you get that trigger email. Now, when the IVF or the immigration verification form is missing, you'll also receive that. We'll be screening for co-applicants for discrepancies. And then next in line is the decision notice. So if your client for any reason, gets denied or they get approved or that approval comes with a counteroffer, you're going to receive an email with this information. Now, it's super important that you review the counteroffer with your client just in case it impedes you from moving forward, right? Sometimes clients can move forward with, 80% of the costs and still, get their case going, and other times it's like not possible. So it's very important for you or your client to communicate to us if that's impactful. If there's any new valuable information or documents, we would love to see it, especially if it supports an increase. So just making sure you communicate that to us so that we can work with you to hopefully get a full approval on the loan. And then I also want to mention that, once the client is approved, we're still going to be waiting for closing documents unless they sent them already. So if they sent them already, we're going to do the contract signing. And as soon as we're done with that process, we will send you an email saying, hey, your client, John Smith just signed. This is the date, this is the amount, and this is when you should expect your ACH disbursement. So we will send that over to you. That way, when that amount hits your bank account, you can identify who it's from. And that usually takes 1 to 2 business days. If you are new with us and you're just starting out your referring, just make sure you coordinate with us. If your ACH information is not on file yet, you can always reach out to myself, to Lawrence, or our immigration loan specialist, and we can put that on file for you. You can submit like a void check, direct deposit form, or a letterhead document with that information. I also want to show you guys a little bit about our communication channels. You guys are very familiar with Lawrence, and I know for a lot of you, he's your go-to. But we also have other communication channels, especially when it comes to client and application questions. You know, sometimes the clients haven't applied yet and they just want to learn a little bit more, or maybe do like a refresher on what you talked about with them. Or they just want to know the status of their application. Maybe their upload link isn't working or something like that. So just your go-to, your main contact here is the immigration team. So we have a general extension, general email, and all of the stakeholders that work the immigration product have access to that. So that's usually your best bet. However, you can always, as an alternative, reach out to our immigration loan specialist, Mari Carmen, or myself, you know, if there's like something urgent happening and stuff like that. So yeah, these are the communication channels here. And like I said, Lawrence is always available, especially if you have any partnership questions. Alrighty.
So,
Yep.
Roxana, thank you so much. Yes, I appreciate that. And I think we probably would send out our contact sheet again to everyone so they have it. So at this point, we're going to open it up for Q&A, but I'm going to ask the first question of Roxana this morning to give everybody else an opportunity to get their questions together. We've had one or two questions on the chat that have been addressed. But Roxana, you know, you went through the process, the application process from, you know, they've had the consultation, they've referred that particular client to Capital Good Fund. The client goes on our website and starts the process. You know, what is one takeaway if we want to make this as smooth as possible? And I say that with this caveat that we work as quickly, and I think the attorneys and everybody else on the phone, on the call will agree. We work as quickly as a client gets us the information we need, right? And if we're requesting additional information, we have to, you know, kind of wait on the client because we understand they're very busy, right? But what takeaway or nugget can you leave with our partners today to even make this more of a smoother process from, you know, consultation to closing? Because at the end of the day, you know, it's all about closing loans and getting funds to our partners so they can move on with the case.
Oh, yes. And we definitely want to get the, you know, the files to the finish line. We know that's super important, and a lot of the cases are urgent. You know, hopefully I didn't spook you with all this information. I know it's like a lot to take in at first. And by the way, we're recording this session and we will be sharing it for those of you that want to kind of listen to it again. But I would say the biggest takeaway here is that, as you can tell, there's a big flow of like information and documents happening through the stages. So it's super important for you to prep for that flow to happen, for all these documents to be submitted in a timely fashion, and that will really get you the most efficient process. You know, you'll probably hear your clients mention that we gave them like some deadlines, and we usually extend them, especially if they're actively speaking with us. But it's super important for them to maintain the communication, to let us know if they need alternatives and stuff like that. So just prepping for that and submitting it as soon as possible, whatever requests that come up during evaluation especially, is super important.
Thank you. Okay, so we've had some questions and let's dive right into those. One here is from Rachel. Can we get also the questionnaire and questions and the slide with the documents list? Yes. We do have the checklist, right? That's what she was referencing to. So we'll get all of that information out as well as this presentation. So Rachel will get that taken care of. From Courtney, does our client need a social security number to apply? You know what? I'm not going to do all the talking here. So Roxana, I'll leave it up to you.
Yeah. So for the immigration loan in particular, your client can have a social, an ITIN, or neither. So they can apply. Sometimes, you know, we may hit a wall with like there not being credit history or stuff like that, but we always try to rely on like the full picture. So we'll ask for proof of their income, or as a last resort, we'll try to get a co-applicant in there, but they don't have to have a social security number to apply.
Perfect. Thank you so much. moving right along, Sergio, if the applicant has or needs a joint sponsor um, that meets your standards, do we still need those requirements like bank account, etc., for the actual immigrant or the actual client who's going to be the beneficiary? So that is a very good question. So if they need a co-applicant, does a co-applicant have to meet our standard of bank statements, ID, so on and so forth? So Roxana, Kyle, I'll leave it up to you guys.
Yeah, I'll lead it off, and Kyle, definitely feel free to chime in, but they're essentially subject to the same eligibility. So if you're ever you're doing a consultation maybe, and like there's a a second person there that is willing to co-apply, that same checklist, you can go through the same questions with them. We will ask them to submit their 3 most recent bank statements as well. And then if we close the loan with a co-applicant, we'll usually gather their ID, maybe a proof of address. And then depending on the case, and I think Kyle can speak to this, we'll probably request proof of income if they're the supporting factor.
Kyle, will you like to add anything?
No, you nailed it, Roxana. I think that's the gist of it in itself. And if for some reason the initial applicant, the beneficiary, doesn't meet one of our requirements, that's where maybe the joint sponsor can kind of take over as the party to the loan. Your client can be the beneficiary, but otherwise, yeah, Roxana nailed it. Thank you.
And let me just add, for our participants that are here, I mean, I am just thrilled and kind of over the moon, because I don't think there's anywhere else you're going to have the ability to really get face to face, even though it's virtually, with our Director of Loan Originations to address questions, and also our Director of Credit, right? So guys, we still have a few more minutes. Just start firing away, because we're here to get this information out. Like I said in the last presentation, we're not looking to have you guys be credit officers or underwriters, or or be a processing loan origination person, right? We just want to make sure that you understand, how we process loans, what we're looking at, so those clients that you refer to us have a high probability of getting through, getting approved, and getting funds for the case, right? As we've mentioned in the past, 60 to 65% of applicants that you refer to us, and thank you very much for all of the referrals, get approved. So we have a high approval rating. We're not FICO score driven, but there's certain factors that we need to look at, and banks, it all starts with bank statements. So please answer away, ask the questions, please, and we can continue on. Now, the next question, I think I might have missed one. If there is a co-sponsor, does the applicant need a bank account? I think we addressed that. Yes.
And sorry, Lauren, I answered a question, which was an excellent question. You may have mentioned this, but are there any specific immigration cases you do not take?
Yes.
I think it's a great question. And as I mentioned in the answer, so asylum cases, I-601A cases, and detainee work are likely to prompt additional requirements, but are not by any means excluded. I don't believe we exclude any specific case type. Lawrence, or Roxanne, anything comes to mind that we've been unable to work with?
No, I think we say we cover all immigration related cases. There's some that we haven't done a lot of EB cases, EB5s, EB2s, right? EB1s. We'd like to do more, but we've covered it all, from detention bonds all the way through, VAWA, asylum, you name it. So I think we got it covered. Okay, we have another question from Sergio. Thank you. Are the USCIS fees sent to the representative or directly to the beneficiary? Well, Roxana, because I'll just keep talking. Yeah. So Roxana, go right for it.
No, that's fine. I was actually muted a minute ago. It was something related to this as well. So we always pay out directly to the attorney in all circumstances. So anything related to the case will go out to the attorney. And I actually wanted to make a point there. We like Lawrence and Kyle said, we do take all the cases. We haven't really made an exemption list or something like that. But we only cover outstanding expenses, right? So if your client is looking for a reimbursement, we will not cover that, because then that would mean we pay out to the client, and we usually pay out to attorneys only. So just making sure that those are outstanding fees that are being filed under the loan, then we would be able to go ahead and do that.
Thank you. Next question. What is the minimum amount for a loan and the maximum amount? So the maximum amount for immigration loan, we call Unity loan, that's our branding for it, is $20,000. That's the max we will do. Average immigration loans that we do here at Capital Good Fund are about $6,600, $6,700. The minimum on the Unity loan is $1,501 to get that 4-year term. Anything below that is going to go into another product depending on what state you're in. That might have what, a 2-year or 3-year term. And Roxanne, if I missed anything, please just fill in for me. You're on mute.
Okay, sorry about that. I keep muting myself. So the Unity loan, you can think of it, it covers like the larger portions. In some states, we do have our, personal loan products that the applicant can still apply for. So for example, in Florida, we have our impact loan, ranges between $300 up to $1,500. So they can apply for that still for immigration, expenses and cover it if they're not really meeting that minimum for the larger loan. So they can still apply for that. They just have to check that there's an available product in their state.
Thank you. Any other questions? We're at 11:30, which we wanted to keep a 30-minute session. If there are no other questions, I'll just wait a few seconds. If there are no other questions, please, no question is a question that's that shouldn't be asked. Just ask, because if you don't ask, somebody else is probably thinking about it. So just ask away. These are all good questions. We're all here learning. Okay, I don't see any other questions. So Roxana, I am going to move this over and you can go on to your next slide, which I can kind of talk from.
I just want to make one quick
Yep.
final mention, just for those of you who are new with us or just didn't know this. Our application pipeline is open 24/7. So you'll only reach us over the phone during business hours. But if your client is pending like 5 documents, it's the weekend, and this is the best time for them to submit it, they can always go into the upload link, submit that on a Saturday, send us an email, with more information if that's applicable, and then we'll look at it on Monday morning. They can also apply over the weekend. All these triggers that we're talking about will work. So as soon as your client hits submit, you'll receive an email in case, you're working Saturdays too. So it's not closed off. They don't have to wait until business hours or the weekdays to get going with the process, right? They can work on that after. So just wanted to mention that.
Thanks, Roxanne. We have 2 more questions. Could you elaborate, this is for Jennifer, could you elaborate more about the loans, 6,600 and 1,500? So I apologize. 66, I was just saying, is the average loan that we do. When you look at all the loans that we've done here at Capital Good Fund, which probably we're reaching over 5 million in immigration loans that we've done here. The average is about 6,600. We've just closed a loan 2 days ago for 19,005, or just approved 19,005. We haven't done a $20,000 loan since I've been here. The biggest we've done is 19,500. On the $1,500 side, if the loan requests, and usually it's USCIS filing fees are less than $1,500 or less, we have another product that we'll use. We won't put anybody in a 4-year loan for $1,500. So we use another one of our products, Impact Loan, Impact Plus Loan, that has a shorter term. So hopefully I cleared that up for you, Jennifer. And then the other question we have is, and this is a good one, from Yasina Castillo. What are the requirements for a client to get a large loan amount? Does credit history impact that? Yes, and I'm going to open that up for Kyle to address that issue.
This is a great question. So I'd refer back to our webinar last week, and I'd say the larger the loan request, the larger the emphasis on the applicant's willingness to repay. So remember, willingness to repay is a bit of a proprietary concept for us. For a large loan, that often means having credit history, you know, having some trades paid on time. But again, there may be a unique application factor that, you know, charts the course a little bit differently. So it's going to be case by case, but generally speaking, yes, the larger the loan, larger the emphasis on willingness, which is going to, you know, typically mean credit history or repayment history in some form that they're able to present. So good chance we'll need some credit history for a large loan. That's the gist of it.
Thank you, Kyle. I'm particularly, Sergio, please clarify this again. Beneficiary as a co-applicant that meets all the requirements. Does the actual beneficiary also need to meet them or not because the co-applicant takes that burden? Kyle, I think this would be more of a credit question.
Roxana, if you're wanting to take it, either way.
No, you can lead it off. I'll build on what you say.
So beneficiary is a co-applicant, or has a sponsor that meets all the requirements. They wouldn't necessarily have to meet them themselves in that case. The thing is, this wouldn't be a co-applicant. That person would then need to, the person meeting all the requirements would need to be a primary applicant. The beneficiary can just be added as simply the beneficiary, not a full party to the loan. So yeah, it's a bit of an either or. If the beneficiary does meet them, they're able to join onto loan, helps them establish credit history, things like that. But no, we could work with just a co-applicant, and that's this instance, they would just need to be the lead applicant.
Hopefully that helps, Sergio. Two other questions. Average time to close a loan. Once again, I say we work as quickly as the client can get us the information we need. We've closed loans within 24 hours. We've closed loans same day. But on average, it's probably a week to 2 weeks, at least 24 to 48 hours after the loan has been submitted. The client or the client that you refer to us will get an answer from us. But on average, what do you say, Roxana? About a week to a week and a half?
This is a very popular question and rightfully so. Yeah, I would say if we had to do an average, maybe like a week, but it really depends. You know, sometimes, for example, if there's a co-applicant requirement, you know, that may take some time. You have to ask around, maybe a family member. Sometimes it takes time for them to make a decision. So things like that may impact the process. But if it's very straightforward, they supply everything, we can turn it around in a few days. I think it's case by case, like Kyle said, and how fast we get the information.
Thank you. Customer asked for the interest before they apply. Is there any way we can discuss that with the client? Interest. Okay, so I'm assuming, Maria, that they're asking what the interest rate is going to be, right? Now, our interest rate is either 12% or 15.99%. If you're in the state of Colorado, if the client lives in Colorado, the loan is coming out of Colorado, it's 12%. If the client is in Connecticut, it's 12%. Am I missing another state? Colorado, Connecticut, those are the two, right? That we're at 12%. Massachusetts, we're at 12%. Those are the three states that you have clients in. Their interest rate is going to be 12% spread out over 4 years. If the client is anywhere else, the rate is 15.99%. Cheaper than a credit card, spread out over 4 years. There is no application fee, there is no processing fee, and there is no prepayment penalty fee. So if the client decides after a month or 2 or 3 or whatever that they want to pay this loan off, they just give us a call and they can pay the loan off. No questions asked. Okay. We do have a calculator on our website. We just launched a new website about 2 or 3 weeks ago. So we need to double check to make sure we've had a few bugs on the website. So we just need to work those bugs out. But there is a calculator on the website. So if you're talking or having a consultation and the client is saying, hey, you know, the case is going to be $9,000, roughly what will my payments be? We do have a calculator on the website that will calculate what the estimated monthly payment is going to be for the client. And there's a question here. What is the average interest client would pay monthly if the loan amount is the maximum of 20, assuming the 48 months? We will, I don't have my HP calculator in front of me, so we will have to get back to you on that. We can tell you what the monthly payment is going to be, but the interest costs, you know, we'll have to amortize that out and get that information. So somehow we'll get that posted out and answer that question. Sorry, I couldn't answer it off the top of my head here. Okay, any more questions? Let's make sure we have everyone covered. That's really helpful.
Lawrence, I
Thank you.
just want to mention something here.
Yeah.
We can send a follow-up email like Lauren said about this last question. But just keep in mind that the client is automatically placed on a payment plan for 48 months. But if they ever want to pay towards the loan, you know, in partial payments or in full, they can always do that early with no penalty. They just have to coordinate with our servicing department. And they will save money on interest because, you know, if someone gets a loan with us today and then they pay next month, we will only charge them for the interest that accrued up until their last payment. So that's important, and that we usually get that question a lot during the closing process. So you can always mention that to your clients. Some clients feel that the payment is very affordable and they want to keep the loan to build their credit, which is also a great thing about this loan. It's a credit building loan, so that's also an option for them.
I think we got all the questions. Oh, yeah, we got all the questions. Okay, Roxana, we can go on to the next slide and kind of wrap this up, and everybody can get back to what they were doing.
Yes. So we just want to mention here that we are continuing this webinar series. So our next upcoming webinar will be on November 17th, and that will be with our financial coaching manager, Janet, which I think is on this call. So if you want to learn how coaching can benefit your clients, please join the call. We will be sending out a link to register again, and you can, you know, share that with other people in your team. And also we just really want to encourage our financial coaching program, because it will really set up the tone, even outside of Capital Good Friend, right? Being able to establish credit, and to gain those financial opportunities with other lenders, whether you want to buy a car or a home later on. It's just a big process, especially for those you know, gaining their residency or their citizenship. That's usually one of the goals down the line. So, you know, doing that before the loan process is super impactful. But even if they already went through it, or maybe they didn't get a loan with us, they can still participate in that program.
Yes, thanks. Absolutely, Roxana. Now, folks, remember I said earlier, these are themed sessions. So the first session is September back to school. Second session, you know, trick or treat. You know, it's not spooky, submitting a loan and going through the application process here at Capital Good Fund. November, you know, it's the season of giving thanks, and so Thanksgiving, you know, so it's themed. I will not be dressed as a turkey, so please don't get your hopes up too high. But please join us on November 17th. Thank you so much for the opportunity to spend time with us and to get to know us a little bit more in our process. If there are any additional questions, we're available. Just email. We'll get all the documentation that we said we're going to be getting out to you, including the recording shortly. Thank you.
Thank you all for the time.
Thank you so much.